this video, we're going to talk about major scales. Now, as a starting point for this, we need to talk about how the octave is broken up. The octave is given by basic psychoacoustics. Everyone in the world hears something related about two notes an octave apart. How we split that octave up changes some from culture to culture. A lot of cultures use ways of splitting that up, similar to the Western one, which is to split it up into 12 equal steps called half steps. Half steps sound like this. That space is the smallest interval that most Western music is going to use. We call that the half step. Now, when you put two half steps together, here's up one half step, whoops, up a second half step, two halves make a whole step. We call this a whole step. Now, the most basic element in traditional Western music is what's called a major scale. And that is simply a sequence of whole steps and half steps, and it sounds like this. I write the C major scale like so. Now you'll see C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. The C major scale simply goes note to note. I don't need any sharps or flats. My whole notation system has actually been designed around this, in a sense. If I then label, where are my whole steps and half steps? I start out C to D, whole step, D to E, whole step, E to F, half step, F to G, whole step, G to A, whole step, A to B, whole step, B to C, half step. So from octave, so the starting points are C's. I go up a whole octave in this scale, and I have this pattern of whole steps and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So memorize that. 2 wholes, a half, 3 wholes, a half. And you'll notice already something about this scale. The half steps are special. There are a lot of whole steps. There are only just those 2 half steps. So whereas the notes a whole step apart are a little bit more independent in a sense, those notes that are just a half step apart have a closer relationship. So we're going to name and number each of these notes in the scale. Our starting point, scale degree 1. So let me simply put up the numbers first of all. And when we get back to our starting point, we'll use a 1 again. Every once in a while, you'll see an 8. That's fine. Those are more or less interchangeable depending on context. One important thing I want you to notice is the carets that I've written above each of these numbers. You'll see, and I'll do an extra big one right here. You add a caret to indicate that you're talking about a scale degree. In music theory, we're going to use a lot of numbers, and we're going to use them for a lot of different things. So as a way to allow somebody to immediately see that you're talking about a scale degree, every time you write a scale degree, you want a caret, and you won't use that caret for anything else. So in addition to having numbers, each of these scale degrees also have names. The first scale degree, the starting and ending point, your home base for the scale is called the tonic. The second most important note is about halfway through it, scale degree 5, right here. Listen to a sense of you've arrived at an important way station when you get to that scale degree 5. There we are again. And there's this special sound between those two that we'll talk about later. Because of the importance of scale degree 5, we call it the dominant. The next note that we're going to name out of this scale is number 3. 1, 3, 5 together sound particularly harmonious, and we'll talk about that much more later. 1, 3, and 5. 3, because of its importance, because it's halfway on this journey toward the dominant, we're going to call it the mediant. So now let's name our other scale degrees around those. This one that's just one above the tonic, we're going to call the supertonic. Now, the easiest way to remember scale degree 4 is one below the dominant, subdominant. So supertonic, one above the tonic, subdominant, one below the dominant. Now, historically, that's not actually where that name comes from. This sub prefix actually means something else, and we'll talk about that in class. See if you can't figure out what that sub might actually mean instead of just one below the dominant. There's going to be a clue about that contained in the rest of the names for these scale degrees. So then we just have two more to fill in. So we've got tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant. Scale degree 6, we're going to call the submediant. Well, it's not directly below the mediant, obviously, but the same way 1, 2, 3 steps up from the tonic, tonic goes up 3 steps, is at the mediant, tonic goes down 3 steps, is at the submediant. That's where we get sort of the mediant in the other direction. And finally, scale degree 7. Do you feel a little bit left hanging? Scale degree 7 really wants to continue on to scale degree 1. And because of that sense of leading, we call it the leading tone. So each one of these scale degrees has its own special degree of stability, its own special relationship to the others. And we'll talk about that a lot more in class. For the moment, though, I want to show you something special about our notation system. You see that I don't have to write any sharps and flats, and yet I've got this asymmetrical distribution of wholes and halves that just falls out by writing notes on this staff. You can think of this as a graph of sorts. I want you to understand what a strange graph this is. And to do that, let's look at the graph in your handout.